Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here, and welcome to the next part in our deep dive into the world of For Against Darkness, a solo roll and write, kind of old school style dungeon crawl adventure created by Andrea Safiligoy. I believe that is how you say his last name now. This is going to be a look at the base game. And right off the bat, I greatly enjoy For Against Darkness. And the more I play it, the more I do enjoy it. So knowing that, you can take my criticism of the main book with a grain of salt, because I think this is a fantastic game. However, I have some pretty big issues with the base book. It is a pretty mixed bag, I believe. I think the game that it is presenting is very well made, but the way it is presented could be a lot better. And like I said in the last video in the introduction, there is a second edition of the base game coming out, I believe this year from what I've read. And I'm really hoping that it addresses a lot of the issues that I have with the base game and issues that other people have pointed out. So, what is For Against Darkness? For Against Darkness is a solo game. You could play it as a co-op game, but it's designed to be solo. And you are going to create a party of 4 characters for Against Darkness. The base game comes with a number of different classes, and they are your basic D&D fantasy boilerplate style classes. You have a warrior, a cleric, a rogue, a wizard, barbarian, elf, dwarf, and halfling. Each one of those characters is very basic. So as we look through the books and as we examine and look at each of the classes, you will find that some of the classes are very, very basic, like the warrior here. The warrior, this is all you need to know about the warrior. Some of the classes, like the cleric or maybe the wizard, have a little bit more going on. So you have very easy classes to manage and some more difficult classes to manage. And as we look through the books, you will notice that as things progress, some of the classes get a little more advanced. So this base game covers the characters from levels 1 through 5. And then you have to buy an additional book called For Against the Abyss, I believe. And that takes characters from, I think it's levels 5 through 9. I believe I've read, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're planning on taking the characters up to level 20 in supplements. There is a long roadmap, a long future ahead for this game. But the characters, when you start off in For Against Darkness, are very simple. You will have a few traits. Usually it's you will add your level or half of your level to certain rolls that you will be making. You will be allowed to wear certain kinds of armor, which will help you in defense. You will be allowed to have certain weapon proficiencies. In this case, the warrior can use any weapons. You have a short list of some starting equipment and gear that they will start with. A starting wealth, which is a certain number of gold pieces that you can spend before your first dungeon dive. And then a number of life or hit points, which is usually a number plus your level. So the warrior starts with 6 life points plus its level. The cleric has some spells that she can use here, a blessing spell and a healing spell, and a couple other things. I do want to pay special attention to the art, because like I said in the introduction, I think the art in this game is actually pretty good. And the art that's not great has a really charming look to it. And a lot of the art is done by the creator. And then some additional art in this book was done by Heather Shin and J.M. Woyak of Stinky Goblin. And some additional art was done by Jack Badashki. But overall, I really like the art in this, and I think it adds a lot to the game. I wish there was more of it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But then you have your rogue here, and the rogue is going to be your trap detector and disarming your traps. And they're good at attacking enemies when the party of heroes outnumbers the enemies. You have your wizard here, pretty typical wizard. You will learn some spells and you will be very easy to kill, and you won't be doing a lot of fighting as the wizard. Your barbarian, which is kind of your DPS class. Then you have your elf, which is of course your main ranged class, a dwarf and a halfling. So like old school D&D, some of the races are also classes. So you're going to create your party. You're going to write down your starting equipment. I will post a link to where I have this. I got some of these sheets from BGG. So you'll keep track of your level, your life, how much gold you have, your bonuses that you'll roll for defense, your bonuses that you will roll for attack, and then some of your skills and abilities. And these character sheets are actually for characters levels 5 through 10, but I'm using them for my starting characters because you can also keep track of advanced spells, scrolls, and powers that you have there. So what you're going to be doing is you are going to be rolling up on a chart, and you are going to be rolling for your dungeon. And this is kind of where the roll and write portion of the game comes in. Each of the quests, each of the games in Fort Against Darkness in the base game will have your characters entering a dungeon from one of these 6 dungeon entrances, where you are going to roll a d6, and then that is going to be the entrance for your dungeon. And you are going to be moving through rooms and corridors trying to find the dungeon boss. And each time you come across a boss, or what they call a weird monster, the chances of you finding the dungeon boss become greater. Then you have to face off against that boss and then make your way out of the dungeon. The game has this handy dandy flow chart here that you are going to roll every time you go through a door. You are going to look to see if you're in a corridor or a room. You will roll a d66 to see which kind of space you encounter. So we'll say like this pink die here is the 10s, so 31. If I was walking through this door here, I would look at 31 and I would come across this door here. Then we would move through. This is considered a room. Any space that is 2 or more wide is considered a room. Any space that is only 1 wide is considered a corridor. And so you will be working your way, drawing your map as you go, discovering different types of things, and the game does come with some examples of some shorthand, some code, some a legend that perhaps you can use to keep track of the different things that you have found in the dungeon, like a ghost, a lady in white, a fountain, a blessed temple, a cursed altar, different types of traps, different things that you can discover, different kinds of spells. You have different your boss monsters there, your vermin there, your weird monsters there, and then I think the minions are on the last page here. Those are different kinds of things that you're going to be fighting. So you can use that to keep track of the different things you found. So in my adventure here, I came up here, I found a fountain which helped me heal. The first room, there were some orcs in there. And then I found a cursed altar. I moved up here, fought some hobgoblins, moved into here, had to face off against an arrow trap or a dart trap. Had to face off against some goblins in a corridor here. Found another fountain, a dead end, some fungi folk there. I found my first boss here, but it wasn't the dungeon boss. So then I had to backtrack, and when you backtrack, you roll to face off against wandering monsters that will ambush you on a 1 on a d6. And then I had to come up here. I found a floor trap. I made it into this empty room. And then here I finally found the end boss, which was the Chaos Lord, and I made it out of the dungeon. Thanks in a large part to my cleric, Mara, and her healing spells, which she was able to keep my party alive long enough to make it out of the dungeon. Now, as you are moving through the dungeon, you're not only rolling to see the shape of the room or corridors that you will come across. But you are also going to be rolling to find the contents of the room. So you can find treasure protected by a trap, different vermin to fight, different minions to fight, different weird monsters to fight, and bosses. There will be special features like fountains, blessed temples, an armory, cursed altars, statue, puzzle room. Each of these charts is basically a D6 or a D12 roll or a 2D6 roll. You will discover different kinds of traps, different kinds of special events like ghosts, wandering monsters, ladies in whites, a wandering healer, or maybe an alchemist. You might discover different types of treasure, different types of magical treasure, vermin, minions, random spells, hidden treasures that you might find will come with different complications that you will have to overcome to unearth them. Then, of course, different bosses, different types of weird monsters, which are kind of like more powerful minions, which kind of double as bosses in some ways. And then sometimes you will come across these quests. Now, I've only discovered one way to come across a quest, and that is with the Medusa. Whenever you encounter a monster, you can either just go straight to combat or you can roll a reaction. And this kind of introduces one of the few areas in this game where you are going to have some definitive player choice. Some of the complaints, the main complaint I hear about this game is the lack of player agency. And that is somewhat true. You're not going to be making a ton of decisions in this game. There's almost no tactical decisions. Your main decision comes in the order of your party, because that is important. You do have a marching order here. Now, I am using these myth minis to represent my rogue, my monk, my cleric, and my warrior. And the marching order dictates certain things. So if you have your rogue in position number 1, then your rogue can disarm traps as they come across them. If you are moving through corridors, the heroes in the first 2 positions can attack and defend. If you are surprised, then the rear heroes can attack and defend. So there is some decision in how you order your party, and that can change. You can make a decision to do that. The other decisions that you will be making are, of course, in keeping track of your resources, when you're going to be using your spells, your healing, your potions, your bandages. So the main types of decisions you're going to be making in this game are in resource management, but then there are also some press your luck decisions that you will be making. And those usually come in the form of when you come across a monster, you can choose to make a reaction roll or just go straight to fighting. And so the Medusa here, one of the bosses, if you come across the Medusa, you can roll a d6, and if you roll a 1, you can bribe the monster. So you can bribe monsters with a certain amount of gold and they won't fight you, but then they will just leave you alone, but you don't get the benefit of having defeated them. If you roll a 2 on the Medusa, then the Medusa sends you on a quest. And then you roll on this quest table here, and you have to do something and then go back to the Medusa with the quest accomplished, which is like bring me the head of a creature, bring them a certain amount of gold, etc. And so far, that is the only way that I've found to get one of these side quests. So I think some of the ways to get side quests are a little hidden, and I want to discover more. But then also, if you roll a 6, then the Medusa will fight to the death. A lot of times when you are in combat, there are certain times, especially with minions and vermin, where you get them down to a certain number and they will make a morale roll and the monsters will flee. And if the monsters flee from you, that counts as you winning against them. And so there are benefits to pressing your luck. But then sometimes if your luck isn't good and you roll on the reaction chart, they will fight to the death, which means that they will never flee, even if you do get their numbers down. And combat is the main focus of the base game. You are going to be doing a lot of combat. And the combat is relatively simple. Your heroes are going to have a attack power. So for instance, my monk, his attack is he adds his level +2. He's a really good hitter. So every time I roll a d6 for my monk is level 1. I add a +3 to a roll of a single d6. And if I was fighting minions, then the minions are going to have a level, which is a level 4 for these hobgoblins here. There were 6 of them, which is basically 6 hit points. Minions, each one is kind of like a 1 hit point creature. And you have to hit that target number or above to do any damage. So if I were to roll 3 with my monk, I would add 3, which is 6. The level is 4, so I would kill 1. Now, if you roll multiples of their level, so if you somehow got an 8, then you could kill 2. If you were able to roll a 12, you could kill 3, and so on. So the higher you roll, the better your chances are of killing the minions. When you get them down to a certain number, it's usually half, then they will make a morale check and they might run away. So the minions it's important to keep track of your minion combat, because every time you face off and win against 10 groups of minions, then you get to have a chance of one of your characters leveling up. Every time you face off against a boss, then you get a chance of your characters leveling up. I need to make 2 level up rolls because I face off against 2 bosses in this dungeon and I forgot to make my level up rolls. The way you make your level up rolls, this is another place where some people complain, is it is a chance. And what you do is you roll a d6 like everything else in the game, and if you roll above your character's level, they level up. So if I wanted to level up my monk, I would need to roll a 2 through 6, and then that character would level up and they would gain some life, and their attack or their defense would get stronger. As you move through the books and you move up in levels, you will start to unlock different advanced skills that you can get as your characters level up. So overall, it's a very simple game, and that is its main strength, I believe. It's very easy to learn and play. It's kind of a Zen-like. You start to get into this pattern where you're rolling, you're drawing, you're looking up at your tables, you're rolling, you're seeing what you find, you write it down, you react to it, you move on to the next room, roll to see the shape of the room or the corridor, roll to see what's in there, etc., so on and so on. Usually about an hour, I would say, is kind of like the average time. You can die pretty quickly because there are a lot of die rolls, so you may have some really terrible rolls and die quickly, or you may have some really great rolls and have no issues at all. Another interesting thing about the game, and I think the most interesting thing about the base game, and the rule that I like the most in this base game, are the clues. So at certain points in the game, you can discover clues. And as you discover clues, it's on a roll, so you will have a random chance of discovering clues at certain points. And when you discover 3 clues, then you've discovered something big, something hidden in the dungeon. And then you get to pick from a large list of benefits. And these are really cool. So once you've discovered 3 clues, you can find the weakness of a monster. You can help you deal with a monster, a location of a secret treasure, a location of magic item, true name of a spiritual entity. You can find a new spell. You can increase magic or spiritual power, the location of a scroll, the recipe for a potion. You can discover a terrifying secret, or someone will pay big money for that. Your enemy is in the dungeon. Someone has been imprisoned. You descend from a bloodline of dragon slayers, a secret diet, and so on. So that is really cool because you get to pick your clue that you have found. And so while there is not a lot of story, there aren't a lot of like non-combat events happening in the dungeon, as you find more clues, you can kind of start to piece together a little story about your characters and what they have discovered. I think one of the best clues is when you can find the weakness of a boss. So that really helped me because it gave my party a +2 against the final boss I chose. And then you can take down the bosses pretty easily. This is one of those games where some people say it's too easy, but that really depends on how lucky you are with your rolling dice. So that's a really kind of broad overview. Some of the issues I have with this base game are it's very basic. There isn't a lot of variety in just the base book, and it's structured pretty poorly. The rules, for having so few rules, they are just kind of scattered all over the place. It has this really weird FAQ at the end where it's kind of written in this conversational tone. And I think a lot of these should have just been rules written in the section of the actual rule book rather than in this kind of scattershot FAQ. The way that the book is structured is odd. It never really tells you what you're actually doing in the game. You kind of have to piece it together from multiple different places. It doesn't give you a really nice, okay, here are the step-by-steps that you are going to do to play this game. 1, pick characters. 2, equip your characters. 3, roll for your dungeon. What are you doing in a dungeon? It's kind of like all over the place in this short book. And I think some of the things could just be better explained, especially for how simple the game is. And then so once you've picked your characters and you're going to equip them, then it goes to this really weird section about how to attack monsters, when there is also another section in the back of the book about encountering monsters. So those two sections should have been combined. This would have been a really great space to, like, okay, so you picked your characters, now what are you going to do? Because right after it tells you how to attack monsters, then it does this really awkward kind of transition into building your dungeon. It doesn't make a lot of sense. However, what does make sense is, again, some of this art is really great, and that is a fantastic pencil drawing. Love it so much. But yeah, like I said, it's a little, it's not organized very well. You get into your dungeon and then you get into your charts that you're going to be rolling on. All of these charts are collected into the back of the book to help make finding them easier. And then you start getting into some of the rules about moving through the dungeon. Like this should have been earlier in the book, I believe, because these are kind of your basic rules. So it does really need some structural, some better organization, some better layout to make the game flow, to make learning the game flow a little better. Like these spells. The spells should have been listed maybe at the end of the character section with the equipment instead of coming after the basic rules. Then you get into the encounters, which tells you kind of an expanded how to attack section. And you get some more details. So hopefully in that second edition, I'm really hoping that the rules are better, a little better written, and just structured in a more logical layout. You also get a few rules about playing this game as a light RPG, which I guess you could, but it would be a very light RPG because there really aren't stats that you could ever roll against. But I guess you could play it as a very, very simple kind of OSR dungeon crawl if you really wanted to. But overall, I think the game is pretty great, especially when you start adding more stuff to it. One of the things that's really great about the game is the price. You can pick up PDFs of the game, and they are printable PDFs on DriveThruRPG. I think the base game is like $12, I think. The printed books are usually around anywhere between $5 and $15. Some of the supplemental material you can get for just a couple bucks in PDF form. So this game, like almost everything about the game is like impulse price purchase. Impulse purchase price. I should say. And they keep adding more and more stuff. And the barrier to entry as far as price goes is so low that you can take chances with this game and just buy stuff and see how it goes, and maybe you won't like it. Now, if you are just getting into the game and you really want it right now, I would say, just get the PDF of the base game for now. Wait. If you want the hardback or the paperback, wait until the second edition comes out later this year. And along with the base game, I would say to get the 2 PDF supplements or book supplements, Twisted Minions and Twisted Dungeons, because there isn't a lot of variety in the base game. Especially when you are facing against the monsters, you are going to be facing the same monsters a lot. And the Twisted Minions gives you a D100 chart to roll on that adds wrinkles and different elements to those creatures to make the variety better. And the Twisted Dungeons you will roll at the beginning of your game to give your dungeon more variety. And so with those two supplements, and there's also yeah, I think that would be a really good base game to buy to see if this is something that you will enjoy if you've never played this kind of solitaire dungeon dive game before. For Against Darkness, the base game, Twisted Minions, and Twisted Dungeons. You could have a lot of fun with that. I think that would be around under $20 probably. And you could have a month's worth of gaming for $20. The only other thing you would need are a couple D6, a pencil, an eraser, and a printer to print out your dungeon map, your flow charts to make the game much easier, your character sheets, and this really nice monster handling sheet. Of course, you don't need all the stuff. You could just use index cards, but I really like these things. So yeah, I do recommend For Against Darkness a lot. I highly recommend it. Great game, super fun, good art. It's very light on the storytelling, so you are going to have to bring your own imagination to creating story as you play through some of the additional materials, such as Dark Waters here, which is an adventure for levels 1 and 2. Some of these are paragraph adventures, so they will have way more story. And some of the books have more charts on non-combat things that are going to happen, or different ways to deal with situations in a non-combat manner. So that is another really great thing about the game, is you can just kind of add these modular, inexpensive expansions to your base game and pick and choose what you want to play, when you want to play it. Pick and choose based on how much variety you want, how much depth you want, how many little rules you want, and how much crunch you want. It's a highly customizable game, and that's just the standard stuff or the official stuff. There is also all kinds of fan-made expansions that you can download from the Facebook group. They have a file section there with stuff there. And then on the BGG page, there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, I recommend people buy this game, especially get the base game, Twisted Minions, Twisted Dungeons, and see if you like it. And if you do, then you can continue down the For Against Darkness rabbit hole. And pretty soon you'll have dozens of books, dozens of options. I just got these in the mail today. The Courtship of the Flower Demon, which is kind of this like romantic supplement. So some of the titles do have white or yellow titles. I believe the ones with the white font are a little more adult. They might have some sexual stuff, maybe some more, just more adult humor, that kind of thing. I also did end up picking up the Heart of the Lizard, which is the novella, and this Crucible of Classic Critters, which is a woodland adventures for Against Darkness for characters levels 4 and higher. But yep, so that was the first part. Next, we're going to be taking a look, starting with probably Wayfarers and Adventurers and Concise Collection of Classes. We'll probably be taking a look at both of those next. And then we'll see where it goes from there. So, all right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this overview and review of For Against Darkness, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.